Imagine looking at a satellite map of modern Europe. You won't find France, Germany, or Italy. Instead, you see a single, continuous megastructure of steel and white marble stretching all the way from London to Babylon. If you zoom in on the highest skyscrapers, there are no crosses lighting up the skyline. Every tower is crowned with the symbol of a wolf. And looking up from those towers, space exploration isn't managed by civilian scientists. The planets above are targeted by a military starfleet, and by now Mars is fully terraformed and divided into Roman provinces. Romulus's original trajectory pointed directly toward this reality. We only missed it because of a single, avoidable strategic error made in 753 BC. The standard history books teach a very specific story about Rome's founding. They tell you Romulus murdered his brother Remus in a sudden fit of rage because Remus mocked the low walls of their new city. That framing gets it entirely wrong. This was a calculated strike. It was history's first planned black operation, executed specifically to consolidate absolute power from day one. The true failure was that while Romulus secured the physical borders of his city, he left an ideological vacuum. He allowed his successors the right to choose their own gods and their own morals. By failing to mandate a strict, unified belief system at the start, he planted a ticking time bomb of pluralism. That lack of ideological control guaranteed the empire would eventually collapse under its own weight. The fracture started right at the beginning. To populate his new city, Romulus invited outlaws and fugitives, and eventually struck a compromise to assimilate the Sabine women into Roman society. That inclusion came with a heavy cost. It allowed foreign morals and competing deities to seep into the foundational DNA of the Roman state. A strict Machiavellian strategy demands a completely different approach. To truly conquer and assimilate, an invader must entirely erase the identity and the belief systems of the conquered population. By blending these cultures, religion ceased to be a unifying instrument of state control. Instead, it fractured into a chaotic, competing force that slowly tore the empire apart from the inside. This chart maps an alternative strategy we can call primatus machina. Notice the node at the absolute top, the state. In this model, the state machine maintains absolute supremacy, actively severing any ties to superstition or external mysticism. If Romulus had used his brother's death not as an emotional outburst, but as a calculated public ritual, he could have proven that human logic stands above divine fate. All lawmaking power consolidates directly into a single emperor. Implementing this requires the immediate creation of a praetorian caste. This would be an army psychologically bred to know only the authority of the state, completely stripped of individual identity or family ties. Declaring himself the sole source of law from day one would have vaccinated Rome against the internal religious friction that eventually forced the empire to kneel to Christianity centuries later. In our history, the rise of religious dogma often prioritized scripture over engineering, stalling technological progress for a millennium. This graph tracks how different the world looks when that friction is removed. Without that resistance, the steam engine, already invented in Roman Alexandria, moves from a classroom novelty to an industrial project by 300 AD. By the 13th century, Roman legions aren't marching with iron swords. They are equipped with advanced hardware, relying on thermal visors and active targeting interfaces. These legions are supported by massive industrial power plants, derived from Heron's ancient designs and scaled up to drive an armored global armada. This force crosses the Atlantic centuries before Columbus, founding Colonia Romula in the Americas. Technological supremacy is the inevitable payoff for a society that prioritizes empirical survival over abstract salvation. Operating under those conditions brings us to a chilling modern reality. It's a system built entirely on social Darwinism, where the concept of mercy is erased and a citizen's moral worth is calculated solely by their material contribution to the state. There is no open internet for free expression. Instead, there is the Cerebrum Romae, a strictly controlled global neural network dedicated exclusively to managing imperial resources. Culturally distinct cities like New York and Tokyo simply do not exist. The entire globe is paved with the standardized brutalism of the Roman Forum, and Latin is the only permitted language of commerce and command. Achieving perfect, unified human efficiency demands a terrifying price: the complete eradication of human cultural diversity. Rome's eventual collapse was not a failure of its military, but of its internal cohesion. By allowing cultural and religious compromise at the start, Romulus guaranteed that the state would one day be paralyzed by its own internal contradictions. The empire fell because it failed to remain a cold, unfeeling machine. It allowed itself to become too human, permitting discord to survive past its founding. The ultimate rule of building an empire is clear. You don't build walls to protect citizens. You build walls to dictate reality itself to your enemies. True power requires engineering a world where all roads lead to Rome ceases to be a clever phrase. Instead, it becomes an inescapable physical law.